The chamber was so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Ambassador David Mercer had read the briefings, studied the holographic models, and prepared himself for weeks. Nothing had prepared him for this. He stood on a floating platform barely 10 meters wide, suspended in the center of a spherical room that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Around him, rising in endless tiers like a stadium designed by gods, sat the representatives of 400 species. Some were massive creatures of stone and metal. Others were clouds of glowing gas contained in magnetic fields. A few were so strange that his mind refused to process what his eyes were seeing. This was the Galactic Council, the supreme authority over 12,000 inhabited worlds. The body that had governed the stars for longer than humanity had existed as a species, and they were all staring at him. General Maria Santos stood at his right side, her military uniform crisp despite the 18-hour journey through hostile space. Dr. Benjamin Cole occupied his left, carrying nothing but a small tablet computer that contained secrets worth more than most planets. The Supreme Voice, a creature that resembled a jellyfish made of living crystal, descended from the highest tier on currents of controlled gravity. Its body pulsed with colors that had no names in any human language. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere at once. The Terran delegation will explain why they have violated 17 articles of the Galactic Compact. They will explain why their primitive species has dared to challenge vessels of the hegemony. They will explain why they should not be erased from existence. David felt the weight of every alien eye upon him. 400 species, thousands of representatives, millions of years of combined civilization, all of them expecting him to beg for mercy. He adjusted his tie instead. "Supreme Voice," he said, his words translated instantly by the chamber systems. "I appreciate the opportunity to address this assembly. However, I must first correct an error in your records." Silence fell across the chamber like a physical force. Species that communicated through psychic emanations actually recoiled. This was not how conquered peoples behaved. "The reports state that we destroyed 3 hegemony patrol vessels," David continued. "The actual number is 5. 2 additional ships attempted to flee and broadcast our tactical responses. We could not permit that." A sound rose from the assembled delegates. It was not quite laughter and not quite outrage. It was the sound of 400 species trying to understand what they were witnessing. A representative of the Krath Dominion, a species of towering insectoid warriors who had conquered 60 worlds, rose from its seat. Its mandibles clicked in what the translation systems rendered as contempt. "This creature stands before the council and admits to additional crimes? Does it not understand what we can do to its pathetic world?" Dr. Cole looked up from his tablet for the first time. His expression suggested mild academic interest, nothing more. "We understand exactly what you can do," he said. "The question is whether you understand what we can do in response." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Psychic protests battered against the platform's shields. The Supreme Voice raised several crystalline appendages, calling for order that took nearly 3 minutes to restore. "You will be silent," the Supreme Voice commanded. "You will hear the terms of your surrender. You will accept territorial restrictions, population controls, and military limitations as determined by this body. Refusal will result in the complete destruction of your home system." David looked at Maria. Maria looked at Benjamin. A decision passed between them without words. "We did not come here to surrender," David said. "We came here to give you one final chance to avoid what is coming." More laughter. A young species, barely 3 centuries into spaceflight, offering the masters of the galaxy a chance? The absurdity of it echoed through the tiers. But the 3 humans did not laugh. They did not even smile. 6 months earlier, humanity had learned the truth about the galaxy. The first message from the stars had arrived on a Tuesday morning. A hegemony survey ship had entered Earth's solar system, scanned the planet, and transmitted a brief report. Primitive species detected. Resource extraction potential moderate. Integration recommended. David had been a career diplomat, specializing in impossible negotiations. He had brokered peace between nations that had been at war for centuries. He had talked terrorists into releasing hostages and dictators into stepping down peacefully. The United Nations had chosen him because they needed someone who would not panic when facing the impossible. He had traveled to the hegemony's regional station aboard humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, a ship held together by hope and engineering miracles. There, he had learned what integration truly meant. A galactic council was not a government. It was a system of organized exploitation. Powerful species extracted tribute from weaker ones. Weaker species survived by being useful or by being too expensive to eliminate. Species that were neither useful nor costly simply ceased to exist. Humanity had been designated for integration. Their resources would be stripped. Their population would be relocated to labor colonies on distant worlds. Their culture would be erased. Within 10 generations, humans would exist only as workers, their identity dissolved into the hegemony's vast machinery. David had returned to Earth with this knowledge. The world's leaders had gathered in secret bunkers, arguing about how to respond. Some advocated submission. Accept whatever terms might allow some fragment of humanity to survive. Others demanded defiance, even knowing it meant extinction. It was General Maria Santos, who had changed everything. She had risen in a career military that had never imagined fighting among the stars. Now she commanded the United Earth Defense Force, an organization that had existed for barely 6 months. She had stood before the gathered leaders and revealed what humanity had been doing while David negotiated. They had not been idle. They had been building. Beneath the surface of the moon, in facilities hidden from every sensor the hegemony possessed, humanity had constructed a fleet. Not just ships, but weapons based on discoveries made by Dr. Benjamin Cole and his team. Weapons that exploited a fundamental weakness in hegemony technology that the aliens themselves did not know existed. The project was called Prometheus, named for the Titan who had stolen fire from the gods. Now, standing before the Galactic Council, David understood the weight of what they carried. They were not here as supplicants begging for mercy. They were here as messengers delivering a warning. The Supreme Voice's crystalline form pulsed with impatience. You waste this council's time with empty threats. Your species number's in the billions. Ours number in the trillions. Your ships are primitive. Ours darken the skies of 1,000 worlds. What could you possibly do that would concern us? David reached into his jacket and removed a small device. It looked harmless, almost like a television remote. He held it up for the chamber to see. This device is connected to Dr. Cole's tablet through quantum entanglement, he explained. When I press this button, a signal will be sent to our fleet, which is currently positioned at the edge of your space. That fleet will then demonstrate exactly what we can do. The Supreme Voice made a sound like breaking glass. You dare threaten the Council with your pathetic fleet? We have already dispatched forces to intercept it. By now, your ships are debris. David nodded slowly. Yes, we know. You sent 15 destroyers to intercept our 40 vessels. He paused. Would you like to see what happened to them? He pressed the button. The chamber's massive display systems activated, showing a region of space near the border of hegemony territory. The footage was barely 3 hours old. It showed 15 hegemony destroyers approaching a formation of human ships. That it showed those destroyers going dark, not destroyed, not damaged, simply dead. Every system offline, every weapon silent. 15 ships carrying over 50,000 crew members. Rendered completely helpless in less than 4 minutes, the human fleet passed through them without firing a single shot. The chamber fell into absolute silence. For the first time since humanity had entered this room, the contempt and amusement were gone. In their place was something new. Fear. Dr. Cole stepped forward. Your technology is based on quantum-linked networks. Sophisticated, elegant. Every component of every ship connected to every other component through entangled particles. It makes your vessels incredibly efficient. He smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. It also makes them incredibly vulnerable to anyone who understands how to corrupt that network. Which we do. And that corruption spreads. Every ship that activates its systems will become infected. Every station, every weapons platform, every piece of infrastructure in your entire empire. General Santos spoke next. The fleet you just watched us disable was a test. A proof of concept. What we are offering you now is a choice. David pocketed the device and faced the Supreme Voice directly. Accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic governance. Dismantle the systems of exploitation that have enslaved countless species. Allow those who wish to be free to claim their freedom. Do this, and we will share our technology with you to prevent its use as a weapon. The Supreme Voice's form flickered with colors that suggested barely contained rage. And if we refuse? David's expression did not change. Then every ship, every station, and every weapon you possess will become as useful as those destroyers. And when your military lies helpless, the species you have oppressed for millennia will remember what you did to them. He let that sink in for exactly 3 seconds. We are not asking for much, just the chance to exist, the chance to grow, the chance to matter. Deny us that, and we will tear this council down around your ears. The Supreme Voice rose to its full height, crystalline appendages spreading wide. The council will deliberate, it announced. The Terran delegation will wait. But as the humans were escorted to a holding chamber, David noticed something. Several of the alien delegates were not looking at him with fear or hatred. They were looking at him with hope. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, humanity's fleet continued its advance, carrying weapons that could reshape the galaxy and warriors who refused to kneel. The peace talks had not yet collapsed, but the war had already begun. Counselor Varin had witnessed the fall of 17 civilizations. He was old even by the standards of his species, the Morvani, who measured their lives in millennia rather than centuries. His body resembled a collection of floating stones held together by invisible forces, and his mind contained memories that stretched back 40,000 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything like what the humans had just done. He floated through the ancient corridors of the archive wing, a section of the council headquarters that most species had forgotten existed. The walls here were not the gleaming crystal of the main chambers, but rough stone carved with symbols, so old that their meaning had been lost. The Mavani had once ruled a quarter of the galaxy. They had built monuments that spanned star systems. They had commanded fleets that darkened the void between worlds. Now they were archivists and historians, keepers of knowledge that the current powers preferred to ignore. It was fitting, Varin thought, that they would be the ones to remember what everyone else had forgotten. He entered the deepest vault and activated displays that had not been touched in 3,000 years. Holographic images flickered to life around him. Ships of ancient design, weapons that had been banned for eons, and faces, strange, familiar faces, the architects, 60,000 years ago, before the hegemony, before the council, before any of the current great powers had even achieved spaceflight. The architects had ruled the stars. They had been a species of builders and dreamers, creating wonders that still defied explanation. Their cities had floated in the hearts of stars. Their ships had crossed between galaxies in the time it took to draw breath. They had also been completely destroyed. The records were incomplete, fragmented by time and deliberate destruction. But the story was clear enough. The architects had refused to submit to the precursors of the current order. They had fought back with weapons of terrible power. The war had lasted 1,000 years and had nearly consumed the galaxy itself. In the end, the architects had lost. Their worlds had been burned. Their people had been scattered to the cosmic winds. Their very name had been erased from history, remembered only in these forgotten archives. But as Varan studied the ancient records, something troubled him. He called up the biological data that the Council had collected on humanity. Then he placed it beside the fragmentary genetic records of the architects. The match was not perfect. 60,000 years of evolution had changed much, but the core structures were identical. The neural architecture, the genetic capacity for adaptation, the strange, almost impossible ability to learn and change and grow faster than any species had a right to. Humans were not just another primitive species waiting to be conquered. Humans were the architect's children. Across the station, in the holding chamber assigned to the Terran delegation, David Mercer was not waiting quietly. The room was comfortable enough by alien standards, with surfaces that could reshape themselves to accommodate different body types. The 3 humans had been given food and water and told that the Council would deliberate for as long as necessary. David had immediately begun planning for what would come next. They will reject our terms, he said, pacing the length of the chamber. The hegemony has too much to lose. If they accept equality for humanity, every oppressed species in the galaxy will demand the same. General Santos sat on a reformed surface, her posture relaxed but her eyes alert. How long do we have before they make their decision? Based on their standard procedures, anywhere from 6 hours to 6 days. David stopped pacing and turned to face his companions. But they have already made their decision. They made it the moment we walked into that chamber. Everything else is just performance. Dr. Cole looked up from his tablet. He had been working continuously since they arrived, running calculations and monitoring the quantum links to their fleet. The infection is spreading faster than we projected, he reported. Every ship that communicated with those disabled destroyers has now carried fragments of our code deeper into their network. Within 48 hours, we will have access to roughly 30% of their military infrastructure. And the Liberation Fleet? Santos asked, in position and waiting for the signal. David nodded slowly. The Liberation Fleet was not a military force in the traditional sense. It was a collection of ships from 17 different species that had been quietly preparing for this moment for years. Species that had been crushed under the hegemony's boot. Species that had been told they had no hope of freedom. Humanity had given them that hope. It had started with a single encrypted message, sent through back channels that the hegemony did not know existed. A simple offer: when the time comes, we will stand with you. The responses had overwhelmed David's expectations. Species he had never heard of, civilizations that had been subjugated for millennia, all of them hungry for a chance to fight back. All of them waiting for someone to strike the first blow. Tonight, that blow would fall. A chime sounded through the chamber, and the door slid open to reveal a figure that David had not expected. Counselor Varan floated into the room, his stone-like components rearranging themselves into something like a formal posture. Ambassador Mercer, the ancient being said, we must speak privately. David glanced at his companions. Santos's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the concealed weapon at her hip. Cole continued to work on his tablet, but his attention was clearly on the newcomer. Counselor Varan of the Morvani, David said. I did not expect a visit from the archivists. No one ever expects us. That is why we are useful. Varan moved further into the room, and the door closed behind him. "I have discovered something that changes everything. Something that this council has forgotten for 60,000 years." He activated a small device, and holographic images filled the space between them. Ships that looked almost human in their design. Cities built with an aesthetic that felt strangely familiar. And faces. Humanoid faces with eyes that held the same determination David saw in his own mirror every morning. The architects, Varin said. They were the last species to challenge the order of the galaxy. They were also the most powerful civilization ever to exist. Their technology was so advanced that even today, we do not fully understand how it worked. And what happened to them? David asked, though he could already guess the answer. They were destroyed. Every world burned. Every ship broken. Every record erased. Varin's components shifted in what might have been sorrow. Or so everyone believed. He manipulated the display, showing a comparison between architect genetic data and human DNA. You are their descendants, Ambassador. Somehow, they survived. Somehow, they reached your world and left behind a seed that would grow into your species. You carry their legacy in every cell of your body. The chamber fell silent. David stared at the holographic evidence, his mind racing through the implications. If the Council discovers this, Santos said slowly, they will not just try to conquer us. They will try to exterminate us completely. Yes, Varin agreed. The architects nearly won the last war. The precursors of the hegemony barely survived. They will not allow that threat to rise again. Dr. Cole finally set down his tablet. How do you know this is accurate? These records are 60,000 years old. Because the Morvani never forget. It is our curse and our purpose. Varin turned to face David directly. Ambassador, I am not here to threaten you. I am here because I believe the galaxy needs to change. The hegemony has become a cancer, growing ever more oppressive and corrupt. Species are suffering. Worlds are dying. Someone must stop it. And you think we can? David asked. I think you must. The architects failed because they fought alone. They trusted no one and accepted no allies. Their pride was their downfall. Varin's form pulsed with something that felt like urgency. You have already done what they never could. You have built alliances. You have reached out to the oppressed. You have offered hope instead of just conquest. He extended a stone-like appendage toward David. The Morvani remember everything. We know the weaknesses of every major power in the galaxy. We know the locations of ancient weapons that have been hidden for millennia. We know secrets that could reshape the balance of power. And you would share this with us? Santos demanded. Why? Because we are tired of watching civilizations burn, Varin said simply. Because we remember what the galaxy was before the hegemony rose. Because someone must break the cycle, and your species may be the only one that can. David looked at the ancient being, seeing the weight of countless years in every floating stone. He thought about the fleet waiting in the darkness. He thought about the billions of humans back on Earth, who did not yet know that their ancestors had once ruled the stars. He thought about what it would mean to finish what the architects had started. Tell me everything, he said. And as counselor, Varin began to share secrets that had been hidden for longer than human history. The countdown to war continued. In less than 12 hours. The peace talks would collapse, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The Grand Chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread through the council headquarters that something unprecedented was happening. Species that normally ignored political proceedings had abandoned their routines to witness what promised to be a historic moment. Ambassador David Mercer stood on the central platform once again, flanked by General Santos and Dr. Cole. But something had changed in the hours since their last appearance. There was a tension in the chamber now, an electric charge that made the very air feel dangerous. The supreme voice descended from its throne, its crystalline form pulsing with colors that suggested barely controlled fury. "The Council has reached its decision regarding the Terran species," it announced. "After careful deliberation, we have determined that humanity poses an unacceptable threat to galactic stability. Your weapons technology must be surrendered immediately. Your fleet must be disbanded. Your species must accept integration into the hegemony under restricted status." David did not move. He had known this was coming. "Furthermore," the Supreme Voice continued, "the Council has voted to deploy a demonstration force to your home system. This force will remain in orbit around your primary world until full compliance is achieved. Any resistance will be met with immediate and total destruction." A holographic display activated, showing a fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 40 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a planet. 300 cruisers armed with weapons that could crack moons. Over 2,000 support vessels carrying enough troops to occupy a dozen worlds. This was not a negotiating force. This was an extermination fleet. "You have 1 hour to transmit your unconditional surrender," the Supreme Voice declared. "After that, the fleet will begin systematic bombardment of your colonial settlements, followed by your homeworld itself." The chamber erupted in what passed for applause among the assembled species. Clicking mandibles, vibrating membranes, psychic pulses of satisfaction. The upstart humans had been put in their place. But on the platform, the 3 humans showed no fear. David reached into his pocket and removed a small communication device. He spoke a single word into it: Prometheus. On the holographic display, something changed. At first, the watching delegates did not understand what they were seeing. The hegemony fleet was still there, still advancing toward Earth. But something was wrong. The formation was beginning to break apart. Ships were drifting off course, their navigation systems failing. Weapons platforms were going dark. Communication beacons were falling silent. One by one, the lights on the hegemony vessels winked out. Dr. Cole stepped forward, his voice calm and precise. "What you are witnessing is the complete failure of your fleet's quantum network infrastructure. Every ship in that formation is now running on emergency backup systems only. Their weapons are offline. Their shields are down. Their faster-than-light drives are completely non-functional." The chamber fell into stunned silence. "The infection is spreading through your communication networks as we speak," Cole continued. "Every ship that received a transmission from that fleet has now been compromised. Every station that processed their signal carries the virus. Within 6 hours, approximately 20% of your total military capacity will be as helpless as those dreadnoughts." The Supreme Voice's form flickered with what could only be described as panic. "Impossible. Our systems have security protocols that have never been breached. Your security protocols assume that attacks will come from outside your networks," Cole explained. "Ours came from inside. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic communication, every routine data exchange over the past 18 months has carried fragments of our code. We have been inside your systems for longer than you knew we existed." General Santos stepped forward, her military bearing making her words feel like weapons. "That fleet you sent to intimidate us is now the most expensive collection of debris in galactic history. 40 dreadnoughts, 300 cruisers, 2,000 support vessels, all of them dead in space, waiting to be captured or destroyed at our convenience." She turned to face the assembled delegates directly. "This is what humanity is offering you. A choice. Accept us as equals and work with us to build a better galaxy. Or watch your entire military infrastructure collapse around you while the species you have oppressed rise up and take back what you stole from them." A representative of the Krath Dominion, The same insectoid warrior who had mocked them before rose from its seat. Its mandibles clicked rapidly, the translation system struggling to keep up with its fury. You speak of equality while threatening us with destruction? You are no different from any conqueror who came before. The difference, David said quietly, is that we do not want to conquer anyone. We want to be left alone to live our lives and build our future. We want the same for every species that shares that dream. He paused, letting his words carry through the vast chamber. We did not start this conflict. We did not choose to be labeled as primitives fit only for exploitation. We did not ask to have our world threatened with extinction. He pointed at the display, where the hegemony fleet drifted helplessly in the darkness. But we will finish it. The Supreme Voice's crystalline form had shifted from rage to something more calculated. It was thinking, David realized, weighing options, looking for an angle that might still work in its favor. If we agree to negotiate, it said slowly, will you halt the spread of your weapon? No, David replied. Negotiation time is over. You had your chance to accept our terms peacefully. You responded by sending a fleet to destroy our home. He removed his diplomatic credentials and dropped them on the platform. The small identification badge clattered against the surface, the sound echoing through the silent chamber. The United Earth Confederation hereby withdraws from all diplomatic proceedings with the Galactic Council. As of this moment, a state of war exists between humanity and the hegemony. The words seem to hang in the air. Impossible and yet undeniable. A representative of the Velith Collective, a species of aquatic beings who had rarely spoken in council proceedings, rose from their containment tank. You are declaring war on the entire galaxy? No, David said. We are declaring war on those who would destroy us for the crime of existing. To everyone else, we offer a simple promise. Stand with us, and we will fight for your freedom as fiercely as we fight for our own. He turned to face a section of the chamber where the smaller species sat, the ones who had been conquered and subjugated, the ones who had never had a voice in council proceedings, the Lithori, the floating minds of the nebular reaches, the crystal singers of Theta 7, the workers and the slaves and the forgotten peoples of 100 worlds. His voice rose, carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We have been speaking with you in secret for months. We have promised you that when the moment came, we would stand with you. General Santos pressed a button on her communicator. That moment is now. Across the galaxy, ships began to move. Not hegemony vessels, but hidden fleets that had been waiting in the shadows for years. Ships crewed by species that had been told they had no hope. Ships carrying warriors who had dreamed of this day for generations. On the council station itself, power fluctuations rippled through systems that had been stable for centuries. Docking clamps released without authorization. Security barriers lowered themselves. And in the depths of the station, where the most oppressed workers had toiled in silence for millennia, ancient hatreds finally found their voice. The chamber's displays began to show reports from across hegemony space. Uprisings on a dozen worlds. Fleet elements refusing orders. Colonial governors being overthrown by their own populations. The revolution had begun. The Supreme Voice's form pulsed with fury beyond anything David had ever seen. You have doomed your species, it declared. We will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. We will burn every world that shelters you. We will erase every trace of your existence from the cosmos. You can try, David said simply. He looked up at Counselor Varin, who floated in the Morvani section of the chamber. The ancient being inclined his stone-like form in a gesture that might have been a nod. But you should know that we are not alone. We are not the first species to challenge your order, and we carry the legacy of those who came before us. The holographic displays changed again, showing images that had not been seen in 60,000 years. architect ships, architect cities, architect faces that looked so very human. "We are the children of the architects," David announced, "and we have come to finish what they started." The chamber exploded into chaos. Species who had barely tolerated each other began to argue and fight. Ancient alliances fractured in moments. Fear and rage and hope mixed together into something that felt like the end of an era. In the madness, the three humans were quietly escorted out by Morvani guards who had been waiting for this moment. Counselor Varan met them at the docking bay, where a small ship waited to carry them to safety. "The Council will hunt you relentlessly," Varan warned. "They cannot allow the architects to rise again." "Let them hunt," General Santos replied. "Every ship they send after us is a ship not defending their core worlds. Every resource they spend on the chase is a resource their enemies can exploit." David looked back at the Council headquarters, where alarms were now beginning to sound. "This was never going to end peacefully," he said. "They would never have accepted us as equals. The only question was whether we would submit or fight." Dr. Cole was already working on his tablet, monitoring the spread of their weapon through hegemony networks. "The infection has reached critical mass," he reported. "Within 24 hours, their entire communication grid will be compromised. Within a week, their military will be operating blind." David nodded slowly. "Then we have a week to prepare for the response." He boarded the ship without looking back. Behind him, the galaxy was already beginning to burn. The peace talks had collapsed. The war for humanity's survival had begun, and somewhere in the depths of space, ancient weapons were beginning to wake. The galaxy had not seen war on this scale in 60,000 years. Within 72 hours of Ambassador Mercer's declaration, the carefully maintained order of the hegemony began to collapse. The Prometheus virus spread faster than anyone had predicted, jumping from ship to ship, station to station, corrupting systems that had been considered unbreakable. 30% of the hegemony's military capability went dark in the first week. Supply lines that had operated flawlessly for millennia suddenly fell apart. Communication networks that connected 12,000 worlds fragmented into isolated pockets of confusion and fear. And in the chaos, the oppressed rose. Commander Thomas Reed had never expected to lead a revolution. He was a military officer, not a politician, trained to follow orders and accomplish objectives. But war had a way of turning ordinary people into something more. He stood on the bridge of the Liberation, a cruiser that had been captured from the hegemony during the first wave of uprisings. Around him, crew members from 17 different species worked together with a coordination that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. "Report," he ordered. Lieutenant Kira Novak, his second in command, pulled up a tactical display. "Coalition forces have secured the Lithori homeworld. The crystalline beings have shut down power generation across the Theta sector. The floating mines have expanded into their natural forms and destroyed 15 containment facilities." She paused, and her expression darkened. "We have also confirmed the destruction of 3 human colonies: Proxima Settlement, New Geneva, and the Ceres Outpost. Combined civilian casualties are estimated at 4 million. The bridge fell silent. 4 million dead. The weight of those numbers pressed down on everyone present. The hegemony is striking back wherever they can," Novak continued. "They cannot fight our fleets effectively, so they are targeting our civilian populations. The message is clear: submit or die." Reed gripped the railing in front of him, his knuckles white. "And our response? General Santos has ordered all coalition forces to prioritize the protection of civilian centers. Our offensive operations are being scaled back to defensive positions." "That is exactly what they want," a new voice said. Reed turned to find Counselor Varan floating onto the bridge. The ancient Morvani had become an unofficial advisor to the coalition. his knowledge of galactic history proving invaluable in the weeks since the war began. The hegemony knows they cannot defeat us in open battle, Varin explained. Their technology is compromised. Their communications are unreliable. Their soldiers are demoralized by decades of fighting against primitives who were never supposed to fight back. He gestured toward the tactical display. So they are doing what empires have always done when faced with rebellion. They are making the cost of resistance so high that their enemies will choose to submit rather than continue fighting. Reed shook his head. We will never submit. After what they did to those colonies, surrender is not an option. That is precisely what concerns them, Varin said. Humanity is different from the species they have conquered before. You do not break. You do not bend. When pushed, you push back harder. His stone-like form shifted in what might have been admiration. It is a trait you inherited from the architects. They found it inspiring. And look what happened to the architects, Novak said quietly. Across the galaxy, Ambassador David Mercer was discovering just how dangerous hope could be. He had established a temporary headquarters on a hidden station in the outer reaches of former hegemony space. Every day, representatives from newly freed species arrived seeking guidance, resources, and reassurance that the revolution would succeed. He gave them what he could, promises, plans, weapons, but in the quiet moments between meetings, doubt crept into his thoughts. 4 million dead. How many more would die before this was over? Had he made the right choice in declaring war? Could there have been another way? Dr. Benjamin Cole found him staring out a viewport at the distant stars. You are second-guessing yourself, Cole observed. 4 million people. Benjamin, families, children, gone because I stood in that chamber and declared war. Gone because the hegemony decided to murder civilians rather than accept that they might not own the galaxy. Cole corrected. You did not kill those people. The supreme voice did. David turned to face his friend. Does it matter who pulled the trigger? They are still dead. It matters because guilt will not bring them back. Strategy might prevent more from joining them. Cole held up his tablet. I have been analyzing the hegemony's response patterns. They are consolidating their remaining loyal forces in specific sectors. The losses from the Prometheus virus have been devastating, but they are adapting. Adapting how? They are isolating critical systems from the main network, building redundancies, creating manual overrides for automated functions. Cole's expression was grim. Within a month, the virus will have spread as far as it can. After that, they will begin to regain functionality. Slowly but steadily. David closed his eyes. They had known from the beginning that the Prometheus weapon was a temporary advantage. It had bought them time, disrupted the enemy, created opportunities. But it was never going to win the war by itself. How long until they are back at full strength? Difficult to say. 6 months at the earliest. A year at most. And how long until we can match their conventional forces? Cole hesitated. At our current rate of ship production and recruitment? 5 years. Maybe more. The math was impossible. They needed to win a war in 6 months with forces that would take 5 years to build. There has to be something else, David said. Some weapon, some strategy, something we have not thought of yet. A communication alert interrupted them. The face of General Maria Santos appeared on the display, her expression more troubled than David had ever seen. Ambassador, you need to see this immediately. The image shifted to show intelligence data that had been intercepted from hegemony communications. David read the first few lines and felt his blood turn to ice. The silence. He had read about it in the archives Varin had provided. A weapon so terrible that it had not been used in 50,000 years. A manufactured singularity, a black hole that could be directed and deployed. Once activated near a star, it would consume everything. Planets, moons, ships, the star itself. Every trace of life erased from existence. The hegemony was preparing to use it, and its target was Sol. "They are going to destroy Earth," Santos said, her voice flat with shock. "The weapon is already being assembled at a hidden facility in the Void Sector. Estimated time to deployment, 14 days. David stared at the data, his mind struggling to process what he was reading. They had known the hegemony would retaliate. They had known there would be consequences. But this was something beyond war. This was extinction. "Can we stop it?" he asked. "I do not know. The facility is heavily defended. They have pulled their remaining loyal forces from across the galaxy to protect it. We would need to fight through an armada just to reach the platform." Cole was already working on his tablet, running calculations. Even if we disabled the weapon, they would simply build another. This technology exists. It will always be a threat as long as the hegemony survives. "Then we need to end the hegemony," David said. He heard the words leave his mouth and barely recognized his own voice. 3 months ago, he had been a diplomat seeking peaceful coexistence. Now he was contemplating the destruction of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for eons. How? Santos demanded. "We do not have the forces for a conventional assault. The Prometheus virus is losing effectiveness. Our allies are scattered and still organizing their own liberations." David looked at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, his homeworld was spinning peacefully, its billions of inhabitants unaware that their sun had been marked for death. "Counselor Varin told me about the architects," he said slowly, "about how they almost won the first war. He said they failed because they fought alone, because they trusted no one." "We are not fighting alone," Santos pointed out. "We have allies across the galaxy." "Yes, but we are still fighting their war, reacting to their moves, letting them choose the battlefield." David turned to face the display. The architects tried to match the old power ship for ship, weapon for weapon. That is why they lost. We need to do something different. Cole looked up from his tablet. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that we have been approaching this wrong. We do not need to destroy the hegemony's military. We need to destroy the hegemony itself." David's voice hardened with resolve. "Their power rests on fear, on the belief that resistance is futile, on the assumption that the galaxy has no choice but to submit." He activated the communication system. "Get me Counselor Varin. Get me every allied leader who can be reached. And get me the location of the silence platform." Santos raised an eyebrow. "You have a plan?" "I have the beginning of one," David admitted. "But it requires something that no species has ever accomplished before." "What is that?" David looked at the data showing the weapon that would consume his world. He thought about the 4 million already dead. He thought about the billions. Who would follow if he failed? We need to make them believe that destroying Earth would be the worst mistake they ever made. The war for survival had become a race against extinction. And humanity was running out of time. The silence platform hung in the darkness like a monument to death itself. It was larger than any ship ever built. A massive construct of alien metal and forbidden technology. At its center, contained by fields of energy that bent light itself, a singularity waited to be born. Once released, it would travel to Earth's solar system and consume everything humanity had ever built, ever dreamed, ever been. 12 days had passed since the intelligence had first arrived. 12 days of frantic preparation, desperate coordination, and prayers to gods that humanity was not even sure existed. Now, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Coalition emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Void Sector. General Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the Defiance. the flagship of humanity's combined forces. Around her, officers from 7 different species worked together with a coordination born of desperation and shared purpose. "Fleet status," she ordered. Commander Reed's voice came through the communication system. "All coalition forces are in position. 412 ships from 23 species. It is the largest combined force since the fall of the architects." Santos studied the tactical display. The Silence platform was surrounded by the remnants of the hegemony's loyal military. 200 ships, heavily armed and absolutely committed to their mission. They knew that if the coalition won here, the hegemony would fall. They had nothing left to lose. "They outnumber us in raw firepower," Lieutenant Novak observed. "Their shields are still functional. Their weapons are still operational. The Prometheus virus was never able to fully penetrate their core systems." "Then we will have to do this the hard way," Santos replied. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is General Santos. Behind us lies Earth, our home, our families, everything we have ever loved." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The enemy believes that fear will make us submit. They believe that the threat of extinction will force us to our knees. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show them what it means to face a species that refuses to die." She drew a breath. "All ships, engage." The battle for Earth's survival began. Coalition vessels surged forward, their weapons blazing against the hegemony defensive line. Return fire tore through the darkness, claiming ships from both sides. Within minutes, the void was filled with debris and dying vessels. On the Defiance, Santos watched the chaos unfold with cold calculation. This was not a battle they could win through conventional tactics. The hegemony forces were too strong, too well positioned, too determined. Every minute the fighting continued was another minute the silence. Platform moved closer to activation. She needed a different approach. "Locate Ambassador Mercer's ship," she ordered. "Confirm his position." Novak checked her console. "The envoy is holding position at the rear of our formation, as planned. Dr. Cole is with him." Santos nodded. The plan they had developed was desperate, but it was the only chance they had. Open a channel to the hegemony fleet. Priority transmission. Flag it as a surrender offer. The bridge crew exchanged confused glances, but no one questioned the order. Within seconds, a communication link was established. The face of the hegemony fleet commander appeared on the display. It was a creature of angular metal and glowing circuits, one of the fabricated, a species that had long ago replaced their organic bodies with mechanical perfection. "You wish to surrender?" the commander asked, its voice carrying electronic contempt. "You should have done so before you began this futile assault. Now, we will accept nothing less than the complete destruction of your fleet alongside your homeworld." "I am not offering our surrender," Santos replied. "I am offering you a choice." She transmitted a data package to the hegemony vessel. That file contains the complete specifications for the Prometheus weapon. Not just the virus we used against your fleet, but the full technology. The theoretical basis. The manufacturing process. Everything. The commander's mechanical face registered something that might have been confusion. "Why would you give us this?" "Because within 48 hours, that information will be transmitted to every species in the galaxy. Every world that has ever suffered under hegemony rule. Every civilization that has dreamed of freedom but lacked the means to achieve it." Santos allowed herself a small smile. "The Prometheus technology is not just a weapon. It is an equalizer. With it, the smallest species can cripple the mightiest empire. With it, no power in the galaxy will ever be able to dominate again." The implications settled over the hegemony commander like a shroud. "You would destroy the entire galactic order," it said slowly. "You would reduce civilization to chaos. No, we would reduce tyranny to history. Santos leaned forward. The hegemony has ruled through force for eons. You have maintained your power by keeping advanced technology out of the hands of those you consider inferior. That era is ending, whether you like it or not. She gestured toward the silence platform. You can use that weapon against Earth. You can murder 8 billion humans and feel a moment of satisfaction at your revenge. But it will not save you. The technology will spread. The uprisings will continue. Within a generation, the hegemony will be a memory. The commander's form flickered with what might have been rage. Then why offer us this choice at all? Because humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We never did. We only wanted to exist, to grow, to find our place among the stars. Santos straightened. Help us destroy the silence weapon. Accept the new order that is coming. Work with us to build something better than what you have now. Do that, and we will ensure that the transition is peaceful. Your species will have a place in the galaxy that emerges. And if we refuse? Santos shrugged. Then we fight until one side is destroyed. But even if you win today, you lose tomorrow. The future does not belong to empires anymore. The communication link fell silent for a long moment. On the tactical display, the battle continued to rage. Ships died on both sides. The silence platform crept closer to activation. Then something extraordinary happened. A hegemony cruiser broke formation. Not to attack, but to withdraw. Then another. Then a dozen more. The commander's face reappeared on the display. The supreme voice ordered us to die for the hegemony. But the hegemony is already dead. We simply refuse to see it. Its mechanical form seemed to sag with something like exhaustion. There are those among us who have long questioned whether our way was right, whether the suffering we inflicted was truly necessary. You have given us a reason to stop fighting. The commander transmitted core. Dynates. The silence platform shields have a weakness at these points. Destroy them, and the singularity will destabilize before it can be deployed. Santos stared at the data. Why should I trust you? Because I am tired of war. Because I remember what my species was before we became soldiers for an empire that no longer deserves our loyalty. The commander's voice carried something that might have been hope. Because your ambassador was right. The galaxy can be more than a collection of predators and prey. The communication link closed. Around the Defiance, the battle began to shift. Hegemony vessels were standing down, withdrawing from the fight. Not all of them. Some remained loyal to the end, but enough to change the odds. Santos made her decision. All forces, focus attack on these coordinates. We are ending this now. The coalition fleet surged toward the silence platform. Loyal hegemony defenders fought desperately, but they were outnumbered now, their allies gone. One by one, their ships fell. On a small boarding craft, Ambassador David Mercer led a team toward the platform's core. Dr. Cole carried a device that could destabilize the singularity, but it had to be deployed at close range. They fought through automated defenses and fanatical soldiers who refused to accept that their cause was lost. David had never considered himself a warrior, but he had learned that courage was not about lacking fear. It was about acting despite it. The core chamber was vast and terrible, the imprisoned singularity pulsing with darkness at its center. A single figure stood between them and their objective, High Commander Varix, the architect of the silence program, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell. It had served the hegemony for 10,000 years. It would not yield now. You cannot stop what is coming, Varix declared. Even if you destroy this weapon, another will be built. Humanity will never be safe as long as the memory of the architect survives. David stepped forward. Then we will make new memories. Better ones, You speak of hope as if it were a weapon. It is the greatest weapon of all. David looked at the being that had ordered the deaths of millions. The architects failed because they fought to destroy. We fight to build, to create a galaxy where species can grow together instead of consuming each other. Varrex's form flickered with something that might have been contempt. Pretty words. They will not save you. No, David agreed. But this might. Dr. Cole activated his device. The singularity began to destabilize, its contained darkness unraveling into harmless radiation. Varrex screamed with a sound that transcended physics, then collapsed as the energy that sustained it dispersed into nothing. The silence was silenced. 6 months later, David Mercer stood in a chamber very different from the one where humanity had first faced the Galactic Council. This space was smaller, more intimate, designed for conversation rather than intimidation. Representatives from 43 species sat in a circle. Equals all. Humans, Morvani, Lithori, former hegemony members who had chosen peace over extinction, and dozens more who had emerged from the shadows of oppression to claim their place in a new order. Counselor Varin floated beside him, his ancient form somehow lighter than before. You did what the architects could not, Varin said. You broke the cycle. David shook his head. We started something. Whether it succeeds depends on what happens next. He looked at the assembled beings, the impossible diversity of life that had come together despite millennia of conflict. Building is harder than destroying. This new order will face challenges we cannot imagine. Yes, Varin agreed. But you have given the galaxy something it has not had in 60,000 years. What is that? Hope. The ancient being's components rearranged themselves into something that felt like a smile. The architects left their legacy in humanity's blood. But their true gift was not technology or power. It was the stubborn, irrational, magnificent belief that tomorrow can be better than today. David thought about Earth, spinning peacefully around its sun. He thought about the billions of humans who would never know how close they had come to extinction. He thought about the children who would grow up in a galaxy where species worked together, instead of preying on each other. He thought about what it had cost to get here. The lives lost, the sacrifices made, the impossible choices that still haunted his dreams. We walked into that council chamber ready to die, he said quietly. We declared war against the most powerful force in the galaxy. We risked everything we had, everything we were. And you won, Varin observed. David shook his head. We survived. We created the chance for something better. Whether we won. He looked at the representatives waiting to begin their first session of true galactic cooperation. Ask me in 100 years. But as he took his place in the circle, as species that had been enemies for eons began the difficult work of building trust, David allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had faced the darkness between the stars, and they had refused to kneel. That, perhaps, was victory enough, for now.